Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. And today we're going to be looking at Emma Watson's acting choices.
Okay.
Specifically, we have 3 articles that touch on her stance on nudity and drug use on film.
Yeah.
And it's pretty interesting because, she's had such a successful career and she seems to be kind of limiting herself.
Yeah.
And we have 1 article from LAD Bible and 2 from the Times of India.
Interesting.
And yeah, they all explore, this question of, is she limiting herself? Is this a hard and fast rule, or what's going on here? And you might be surprised to hear the reasoning behind it.
Yeah,
it's not exactly what you would expect. So we're going to look at her motivations, her evolution as an actor,
Okay.
and what this tells us about the pressures of fame.
It seems like from these articles that a big part of this is how closely she's still connected with Hermione Granger.
Right.
That really early role she had.
Right.
And how that's impacting the choices she's making now.
Yeah. And one of the articles even quotes her saying that she won't get her kid off or snort cocaine in a film just to leave Hermione behind.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty blunt.
Yeah.
But it really speaks to, the long shadow that kind of iconic role can cast.
Yeah.
And especially for someone who, started acting so young, it must be hard to break free from that.
Right.
If it makes you wonder if adult actors kind of face that same challenge when they're, moving between roles, or is it more pronounced when you achieve that level of fame as a child?
Yeah. You think about Daniel Radcliffe,
Mm-hmm.
he's done some pretty out there roles.
He has.
Maybe as a way to distance himself from Harry Potter.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah. It's an interesting question. How do you honor that character that everybody loves?
Right.
But then also, make your own way as an artist.
Right. And establish your own identity, because she's not totally against nudity. But it's got to be for the right reason.
So it's more nuanced than just a blanket, no nudity.
Yeah. Yeah. She said that, if it's important for the character development or the story, she would consider it.
Okay.
So one of the quotes is, she'd consider nudity if it's important for the character development and the story.
Right.
But it means you wonder,
Yeah.
how do you figure out if it's actually, serving the story or if it's gratuitous?
Yeah, where's that line?
Where's that line, right? And is it exploitation or is it art?
It seems like that's where an actor's personal values must really come into play.
Yeah.
It's got to be this balance between, what they're comfortable with and what the art demands.
Right.
And, we are seeing more actors speaking out about, what they will and won't do and kind of demanding that agency over their on-screen portrayals.
Yeah.
Which is, it's a good thing to see.
Yeah, and it's interesting, too, because she has talked about, her own self-doubt about her acting.
Really?
Outside of Hermione.
Yeah.
Like in one of the articles, there's a mention of a 2012 interview with Jonathan Ross. And she was saying that she was terrified to play anyone else after being Hermione for so long.
Wow.
A decade as that character.
Yeah, and she even, kind of questioned if she could be convincing, as anybody else.
That's fascinating. That vulnerability.
Yeah.
It just adds another layer to all of this.
Right.
It's not just about, separating herself from Hermione, but it's also about these, insecurities and doubts.
Yeah.
That maybe any actor faces as they're developing, in their career.
Yeah, and it's a good reminder, I think, that, even people who are super famous and, seem to have it all together,
right,
still have those struggles.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. They're human.
Yeah.
Just like us.
Right.
And they have to work through those things, to grow and evolve.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really, kind of humanizes the whole thing.
Yeah, it does. It takes her off that pedestal a bit.
Yeah. And it shows a lot of courage, I think, to be open about that.
Right.
Because, the entertainment industry doesn't really reward vulnerability.
No, it's all about that, perfect image.
Right, exactly. So it's pretty cool to see her, bucking that trend a little bit.
Yeah, so it sounds like she's choosing roles that kind of force her to work through those doubts.
Yeah, I think you could say that.
Yeah.
She's not afraid to challenge herself, and that's admirable.
Yeah, and it also kind of speaks to this bigger conversation happening right now about mental health.
Right.
And especially for people in these really high-pressure creative fields.
Exactly. Actors are starting to open up more about the emotional toll that this work takes.
Yeah.
And demanding, better support systems.
Right.
Which is so important.
Yeah. It seems like people are finally recognizing that, You know, fame and success aren't everything.
Right. There's a human cost to all of it.
Right. Yeah. And she's, Watson's been really vocal about this stuff outside of her acting choices, too.
Oh, absolutely. Her advocacy work
Right.
really speaks to that.
Yeah, like her work with the UN Women's Horseshoe campaign.
Right, exactly. She's using her platform to talk about gender equality, sustainability, ethical fashion.
Yeah.
It's amazing to see.
It really is. She's not just focused on her career.
Right, it's bigger than that.
She's really trying to make a difference.
Yeah, she's contributing to a much wider conversation, about social responsibility and how we live our lives, in a way that's ethical.
And it's so refreshing to see that, because so much of Hollywood feels like it's about, self-promotion.
Oh, yeah.
And image and, who's the hottest.
Yeah, that's why she really stands out.
Right.
She's not afraid to be different.
Yeah.
To be authentic.
Yeah. Do you see a connection between her acting choices and her activism?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
It's all about intentionality,
Yeah.
She's thinking carefully about, the roles she takes on the things she speaks out about. And it's all coming from this place of, wanting to make a positive impact.
Yeah. And that's a good lesson for all of us, really.
Absolutely.
It's not just about actors. It's about, thinking about the choices we make.
Right.
And what we want to put out into the world.
Exactly.
Right.
Aligning your actions with your values.
Right. But do you think that's sustainable, in an industry like Hollywood?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's hard to say, but I guess time will tell.
Right.
But what's clear is that she's doing things her own way. She's not playing by the usual rules.
She's rewriting the script.
Exactly. And that's exciting to see.
So we've talked about, the challenges of breaking free from those iconic roles.
Right.
And how the industry is changing.
Yeah.
And the importance of staying true to your values. It's been a really interesting conversation.
It has.
But before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about.
Okay.
Can you think of any other actors who have faced these kinds of dilemmas? How have they dealt with the pressures of fame?
Yeah.
And still managed to be themselves?
Yeah.
And what were the consequences of their choices, both good and bad?
That's a great question.
Yeah, it really gets you thinking about, how personal choices can play out on this huge public stage.
It does. And it reminds us that, even these big stars,
Yeah.
they're still human. They're trying to figure things out just like the rest of us.
Yeah, it's really interesting to think about, how those individual choices can really spark a bigger conversation.
Right, like a ripple effect.
Yeah. And it says a lot about her, that people are paying attention to what she does and thinking about these things.
Absolutely. She's become kind of a symbol of someone who's really thoughtful about her work and how she engages with the world.
One thing that really stuck out to me from these articles was her emphasis on ethical filmmaking.
Oh, right. Yeah, she's been pretty vocal about that.
Yeah, like calling for more diversity, more inclusion, both in front of the camera and behind it.
Yeah, and making sure that, film sets are safe and respectful places for everyone.
Exactly. It's not just about the final product. It's about how we get there.
Absolutely. She's using her voice to advocate for positive change within the industry.
Yeah, and it seems like she's not alone. Right? There are other actors who are speaking out about these things too.
Oh, yeah, definitely. There's a growing movement, I think, towards greater accountability in Hollywood.
And a sense that things need to change.
For sure. People are demanding more from the industry.
Yeah. So where do you think she goes from here? She's taken breaks from acting. She's focused on her education, and she's been really picky about the roles she takes on.
It's hard to say, but I think it's safe to say that whatever she does, it's going to be on her own terms.
Yeah, she's not afraid to do things her own way.
Right. She's proven that, she's not afraid to take risks, to prioritize her own growth and to use her platform for things that she cares about.
So we can probably expect, something thoughtful and intentional, and probably something that'll get people talking.
Definitely. She's become kind of a role model for a lot of people who are looking for authenticity and, wanting to make a difference in the world.
Well, that about wraps up our deep dive on Emma Watson.
It's been a good one.
Yeah, we covered a lot of ground, talking about, escaping iconic roles and how the industry is changing and staying true to yourself.
A lot to think about.
Yeah, and hopefully we gave you, our listeners, some things to ponder too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We all make choices every day, and those choices have an impact.
So think about what kind of impact you want to have on the world.
Right, and don't be afraid to do things your own way, like Emma Watson.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining me for another deep dive.
Thanks for having me.